This is the Evan Miller Report on Pundit Press Radio. Due to time-sensitive information from a delayed broadcast that aired the day before on SHR Media, some stories may be updated or irrelevant at this time. We hope you enjoy this broadcast of the Evan Miller Report on Pundit Press Radio from SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, ISIS threatens to kill Japanese hostages if Tokyo doesn't pay them $200 million. We'll have the latest on that story. Also, ISIS kills 13 boys for watching soccer. We'll have the latest in these latest round of attacks and kidnappings regarding ISIS tonight. Also, Nigeria officers face a court-martial over suspected Boko Haram sabotages. And it's the State of the Union tonight. We will preview it before our live coverage starts at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, right here on the SHR Media Networks. All those stories and more, plus Corey Evan.
Thousands of lives, but its economic cost isn't as bad, they say. A death row inmate in Missouri gets a second chance from the Supreme Court. Oil stocks aren't doing so hot, but fast food stocks promise to really sizzle. And today's lawsuits around the world seem rather unsporting, really. That's all coming up in today's Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Tuesday, January the 20th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan this evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's interesting to note that tonight's State of the Union address, Obama's looking to reach out to YouTube celebrities to help get the message across as to how our nation is doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And hopefully for him, it won't turn out as embarrassing as it's playing out in my head.
It should be an interesting speech to say the least tonight, and of course we're going to give you the background on the speech, at least of what the White House has put out so far tonight, and give you the latest on who will be speaking in the GOP response tonight as well, leading up to our special coverage of the State of the Union right here on the SHR Media Network starting at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, right here on SHR. So stay with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We'll bring you the latest. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off with the news tonight. ISIS has threatened in a video today to kill 2 Japanese hostages within 72 hours. Pardon the noise there, ladies and gentlemen. 72 hours unless it receives a $200 million ransom. But Tokyo vowed it would not bow to terrorism. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Jerusalem on the latest leg of a Middle East tour demanded the jihadists immediately free the 2 hostages unharmed. He flew home several hours early from the Middle East to take charge of efforts to secure their release after meeting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who described it as despicable, the threat against the abducted men. ISIS has murdered 5 Westerners since August, but this is the first time the extremist group, which has seized swaths of Syria and neighboring Iraq, have threatened Japanese captives. In footage posted on a jihadist website and moved over to also on YouTube, a black-clad militant with a British-speaking accent standing between the hostages Kenjun Gonto and Harjat Yofta, who were wearing orange jumpsuits. He says, quote, the British terrorist says now, quote, You now have 72 hours to pressure your government into making a wise decision by paying the $200 million or 172.4 million euros for our European listeners to save the lives of your citizens, he said. The militant said the ransom is to compensate for non-military aid to the from that Japanese premier pledged at the start of the Middle East tour to support countries affected by ISIS violence. But Suzan Abe, the Japanese prime minister, said that Japan will not give in. He said, quote, "I will strongly demand that they not be harmed and that they be immediately released," he told a news conference in Jerusalem. That call was echoed by Washington, with State Department spokeswoman and BS artist Jan Pizecki adding, quote, "The United States is fully supportive of Japan in this matter." Abe said that the international community will not give in to any form of terrorism, and we have to make sure that we work together. Abe said the aid he had promised in Cairo Saturday was to help the displaced and those made homeless by the conflict in Iraq and Syria. The position is unshakable, he said, describing the assistance as absolutely necessary for the survival of people who have fled fighting. Since August, ISIS has murdered 3 Americans and 2 Britons, posting grisly video footage of their executions. U.S. journalist James Foley and Stephen Skoltoff, and American aid worker Peter Kessing, and British aid workers Alan Kenning and David Haynes were all beheaded. And 13 boys have been executed in Mosul, Iraq over the weekend by firing squad by ISIS because they watched a soccer match on TV. This, according to the Raqaid, is being slaughtered silently, an activist group that claims to expose ISIS atrocities. The website is filled with descriptions of harsh life under Islamic State rule. The report of boys killed for watching soccer comes on the heels of images of the ISIS group released last week that depicted ISIS security personnel throwing 2 individuals to their deaths from a tower because they were convicted of being homosexuals, according to a report from the International Business Times. These images have sparked outrage across the world over the ruthless tactics employed by ISIS. Video beheadings, public executions, and torture have come to characterize life under the Islamic State in Western media. However, the harsh punishments meted out by ISIS authorities to enforce their version of Sharia law are hardly new. The Taliban, who ruled in Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001, quickly imposed strict Sharia law, banned political parties, and killed indiscriminately during their rise to power after establishing control in Kandahar, Afghanistan in 1994, according to Slate. As a result, thousands of members of religious minorities were killed during the 5-year rule of the Taliban, according to Oxfam. This is compared to more than 5,000 civilians who have been killed at the hands of ISIS, according to the New York Times. Over to Nigeria, where they have ordered a Brigadier General and 21 other army officers to face a court-martial over alleged sabotage in the war against Islamic militant group Boko Haram, 2 military sources said today. The charges were not specified. Some officers have been long suspected of colluding with Boko Haram, with President Goodluck Jonathan saying in May that the Sunni jihadist group had infiltrated the armed forces and police. This is the first time senior army officers have been put on trial for offenses relating to the fight against Boko Haram. Thousands of Argentinians in Argentina took to the streets in protest yesterday following the death of a prosecutor, Alberto Nisem. Mr. Nisem was found shot dead in his apartment in Buenos Aires on Sunday. He had been investigating the 1994 bombing of a Jewish center in Buenos Aires in which 85 people had died. Officials said there was no evidence that anyone else was involved in his death, but demonstrators shouted "no more lies" and demanded a thorough investigation. Mr. Nisem's body was discovered just hours before he was due to give evidence to a congressional committee outlining his accusations against Argentina's president, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. A Mali-born Muslim employee who hid customers from the Islamic gunman in Paris kosher market this month has been granted French nationality. Lassine Bathi, 24, was in a stockroom when gunmen Armida Colby burst in, killing 4 people, as we had reported on that day. At a ceremony attended by top French ministers, Mr. Bathi said he was proud and moved to become a citizen. The attacks in Paris killed 17 people, most of them at the offices of the Charlie Hebdo Sanitarial magazine. Mr. Bathi's efforts came to light when he sneaked out and told his story after hiding people in a cold storage room during the assault by Coltable. People say I'm a hero, but I'm not a hero. I'm a Lassine, he said at the ceremony. I'll stay the same. I would do the same again because I was following my heart. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls and Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve spoke at the citizenship event, thanking him for his bravery. Mr. Bly has lived in France for the past 9 years and applied for citizenship last year. Meanwhile, Paris officials say they plan to sue U.S. channel Fox News for a broadcast, which Corey Evan will have more in tonight's lawsuits across America. British jihadist who spent 6 months in Syria and faked his death in an attempt to return to the UK undetected has admitted 4 terrorism offences. Irman Khandwa from Hounslow, West London, poised with a severed head before trying to re-enter the UK. The 27-year-old admitted preparing for acts of terrorism, attending a camp, receiving training, and possessing firearms in a hearing last year. Legal restrictions have been lifted to allow reporting of his guilty pleas. Kawani spent the first 6 months of last year in Syria along the jihadist fighters, the Old Bailey heard today. Police say that his group were involved in major propaganda drives to attract other recruits who were involved in the serious violence in that country. One image, Kawani is seen holding a severed head taken out of a bag, although he masked his face to avoid detection. Kawani, who joined other Brits in the conflict later then, used social media to announce his death during fighting. Police believe this was an attempt to sneak back into the UK unseen. His cousin, 10-year Bauti, 44, from Watford, helped Kawani to return to the UK by driving him from Bulgaria in June 2014, but the pair were arrested by police officers waiting for them at Dover. Australian leader Tony Abbott says an asylum seeker protest at an offshore detention camp has now been broken. His comments come after guards at the Manus Island camp at Papua New Guinea entered a compound where hunger-striking detainees had barricaded themselves in. Some asylum seekers were reportedly arrested in the operation, which came amid an intensifying week-long protest, but a campaigner says hundreds of asylum seekers remain on hunger strike. Australia sends all asylum seekers arriving by boat to camps in Papua New Guinea and the Pacific territory of Nauru for detention and processing. The policy of detaining asylum seekers offshore intended as a deterrent has been criticized by human rights groups. Reports from the center are hard to verify, and the media is not allowed to access the site, and statements from officials and refugee activists cannot be confirmed independently. At least 4 people have been killed in protest in the Democratic Republic of Congo, calling for President Joseph Kabila to step down next year. The protests continued today in the capital, Kinshasa, and internet connections were blocked following Monday's clashes between opposition supporters and security forces. Demonstrators say government plans for a census are a ploy to delay elections. Mr. Kabila is constitutionally barred from running for a 3rd term. The government admits next year's elections could be delayed, but says the census is vital to ensure free and fair elections. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead, take a short break at this particular point. But when we return tonight on the program, the U.S. is supposed to be getting a new embassy in Cuba. We'll tell you where that is tonight. And we prep you tonight for tonight's State of the Union here on the SHR Media Networks, which starts at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, and starts in roughly 45 minutes here on SHR. All that plus, Corey Evan has the business news.
Yes, and by the way, I believe State of the Fart, it's gonna be a stinker. But at any rate, OPEC is making sure oil stocks stay DOA on the Dow. Tax time is upon us, so what do you need to know this year? You'll find out. And a New York fast food chain is looking toward beefing up its IPO. Pardon the pun, ladies and gentlemen, but That's all coming up in the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends. I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller here. Corey Evan in just a moment with some of the day's other headlines today. The high-fenced U.S. interest section on Havana's postcard Pretty Seafront was a symbol of the Cold War friction that is now finally dissipating, according to some, as it prepares to become an embassy. Transforming the concrete and glass mission into an embassy will be a central part of historic negotiations between U.S. and Cuba officials this week, aimed at restoring diplomatic relations. Guarded by stone-faced Cuban police officers, the building was built in 1953, lies along the famous Malacan seawall, a favorite meeting spot for locals and tourists alike. Cars are forbidden to park in front of it, and police chide pedestrians who want to walk along the facility. The United States closed its embassy in 1961 when diplomatic relations with Fidel Castro's revolutionary government broke off, and reopened it as an interest section in 1977 under then U.S. President Jimmy Carter. Since then, the mission and its 360 staff members, most of them Cuban nationals, officially mostly handle consular operations and work to promote human rights. Now, the U.S. wants to turn the building back into an embassy with an ambassador with more freedom of movement within Cuba for its American staff. This will be negotiated on Thursday between senior U.S. State Department official Roberta Jacobson and Cuban Foreign Ministry official Jocelyn Vindel. The two sides will discuss immigration issues as well on Wednesday. And now it's time for some of the day's national news, and we'll go ahead and send it up to Corey Evan up at our national news desk.
Will do, Jay. Thank you very much. And interesting to note what's going on with re-establishing the Cuban embassy there. Hopefully all things go well, but I'm not holding my breath. Any rate, from Yahoo, a unanimous Supreme Court said today that Arkansas can't dictate the length of a beard maintained by a Muslim prisoner after he made his own case initially to the court using a handwritten form. The case of Holt versus Hobbs was accepted in March 2014 after Gregory Holt sent the Supreme Court a 15-page publicly available form asking the 9 justices to accept his case. Arguments in the case were heard on October 7th, and on Tuesday, the court agreed with Holt. Justice Samuel Alito said that Arkansas officials violated the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, or RLUIPA, when it couldn't offer evidence the beard length policy protected correctional officials or blocked the hiding of contraband. Alito also affirmed the RLUIPA doesn't require a correctional facility to grant religious exemptions simply because a prisoner asks for one, or because other prisons grant exceptions. But he said that Arkansas couldn't explain why its beard length policy conflicted with the vast majority of states and the federal government, which permit prisoners to grow half-inch beards for any reason. Justice Sonia Sotomayor concurred with Alito's opinion, repeating that the court recognized that prison security is a compelling state interest. But Arkansas, she said, offered little more than unsupported assertions in defense of its refusal of petitioner requested religious accommodation. Holt, also known as Abdul Malik Muhammad, is serving a life sentence for domestic violence and burglary after he was convicted of cutting his girlfriend's throat and stabbing her in the chest. Ugh. Holt carefully researched his case in Arkansas, and he included numerous prior court cases in his argument. Justice Alito had received the handwritten form in his role overseeing petitions from the 8th Circuit and referred it to the entire court. Noted University of Virginia law professor Douglas Laycock argued Holt's case in front of the Supreme Court in October. Holt said his Muslim beliefs require him to have a beard. Arkansas corrections officials claimed their grooming policy prohibiting beards promotes hygiene and safety. The court previously blocked Arkansas from forcing Holt to shave the beard while his case was under consideration. The U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday threw out an appeals court ruling that went against a Missouri death row inmate who claims his lawyers abandoned him, putting off the imminent threat of execution. The Supreme Court had earlier showed interest in Mark Christensen's case by blocking his execution on October 28th, so he would have time to file new court papers. He will now get another chance to argue his case. Christensen was convicted of killing Susan Brauch, her 9-year-old son, and her 12-year-old daughter in 1998 near her home in southern Missouri. He and his cousin broke into the home and raped Brooke, according to court documents. Then they took the Brooks to a pond where Christensen cut the throats of the mother and son and threw them into the water. They suffocated the daughter and threw her into the pond, according to court documents. Christensen's attorneys argued in an appeal to the Supreme Court that his court-appointed attorneys had failed to meet a key deadline for filing court papers in 2005 and then refused to cooperate when the mistake came to light. The failure to meet the deadline means Christensen's conviction in state court was never reviewed by a federal judge, which is the usual practice. In an unsigned opinion, the Supreme Court said Christensen's claim should be heard. While I just think that he should stay on death row, until they get around to executing him, I suppose that it's worth a second look. From Fox News, a fire official says the relatives of 6 family members unaccounted for after a massive fire gutted a waterfront mansion believe they were inside at the time of the blaze. Anne Arundel County Fire Chief Russ Davey said today that the charred mansion is the primary focus of the search for the 6 missing family members. Davis has declined to identify them. On Tuesday, he wouldn't give further details about what their relatives said or why they believe the family was inside the mansion. Federal investigators are traveling to the scene from across the country. Davies says a search will begin when crews stabilize the structure and pump out tens of thousands of gallons of water from the basement, likely tomorrow. Some neighbors had said the owners of the 7-bedroom house were supposed to head out of town Tuesday, according to Fox News. Neighbors say some of those who are missing could be children, as the couple who lives inside the house was due to leave Monday on a trip with some of the grandchildren. The husband and wife, Don and Sandy Pyle, are still missing. Pyle is the COO of Virginia-based IT firm Science Logic. The blaze reduced the multi-million-dollar mansion near Maryland's capital to a scorched stone framework Monday. The Pyles built the home in the early 2000s. Much of the house collapsed, and given the size of the structure, the ATF was brought in to help with the investigation. The ATF specialized team arrives today, and they will begin searching for remains tomorrow morning. There are no initial signs of arson or anything suspicious. And stay with the Evan Miller Report. We will bring you the latest updates on that case as soon as they become available. But before I send it back to Jason Miller, I have, for the first time in 2015, today's Idiot of the Day. From London, according to the BBC, it's not what Derek Nash expected to find in his 5-year-old's backpack. A bill demanding a no-show fee for another child's birthday party.
What?
Nash said the bill... Yeah, I know, right? Nash said the bill from another parent sought $24. Actually, the amount was £15.95 because his son Alex had not attended the party at a ski center in Plymouth, a city southwest of England. In southwest England. Nash told the BBC yesterday, he had initially accepted the party invitation, but later realized Alex was supposed to visit his grandparents that day. He said he didn't have contact details to let the other family know. The birthday boy's mother, Julie Lawrence, told the BBC that her contact details were on the party invitation. Nash says Lawrence has threatened him with small claims court, but he has no plans so far to pay. Oh, for crying out loud. Just because one kid shows up, that's $15.95 out the window. You could just write that off. You could just claim that's the equivalent of a birthday cake, if you will. I mean, why are you going to go off on one kid who just RSVP'd before he realized he was supposed to be somewhere else that day? Give the kid a break, right?
That's why that qualifies as the first Idiot of the Day.
Absolutely right, and there will be many more as we lead up to this December's Idiot of the Year award. Stay tuned for developments in this and others as we add up to another Idiot of the Year. In the meantime, I'll send it back to Jason Miller.
All right, I'll go ahead and take it then. Thank you very much, Corey, on that. Damn people charging $24 for a birthday party. Well,
I know.
Next time you miss work, I guess the employer can dock your pay for one day too, huh? How about that? That's going to be coming next. You watch. Just terrible. All right, we got to get back on schedule here. That really ticked me off, that story. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Time to preview tonight's State of the Union. Gone are the days when the president stood up to speak to a nation and watch with bated breath to see what was his plans for the year ahead. A television audience of supposed 67 million watched Bill Clinton in 93, but only 33 million tuned in last year for the State of the Union. This time there could be even less reason to watch, as President Obama has traveled around the U.S. previewing his proposals. There could be the odd surprise, of course, but there are 7 things you can expect to hear about the State of the Union tonight. 1. A tax increase on the wealthy. The president will propose a number of measures to tax wealthy Americans and large corporations to pay for improved benefits for working families. That's 1. 2. Paid sick leave. President Obama has called on Congress to pass existing legislation that will require all employees to earn up to 7 days of paid sick leave per year. Currently, an estimated 44 million American workers have no paid sick leave. 3. Free community college. Mr. Obama has called for the federal government to cover 75% of the cost of two-year community college, with states paying for the rest. The proposed modeled off a program by Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam is touted to help 9 million students save about $4,000 a year in tuition cost. Cybersecurity. The U.S. President dedicated 2 speeches in Washington to the issue of cybersecurity, one of which was followed shortly by the hacking of U.S. Military Central Command, Twitter, and YouTube accounts. The proposals will focus on 2 areas: consumer data privacy, and how the government responds to online threats and cybercrime. Methane cuts. The administration is aiming for a reduction by 40 to 45% in methane emissions by 2025. Methane, which makes an estimated 10% of greenhouse emissions, they say, from the Environmental Protection Agency in the U.S., is far more harmful than carbon dioxide and is released as part of the growing U.S. natural gas industry. Mr. Obama will also request $15 million in his 2016 budget for cost-effective technology that detects leaks. And next up, better broadband. That means internet. Most of the internet in the U.S. is provided by private companies, and connection speeds are mixed. Mr. Obama went to Cedar Falls, Iowa, a small city with broadband about 100 times faster than the national average, to propose programs that would increase broadband internet adoption across the country. Mr. Obama called for the end of state laws that prevent tongue twister here. Municipalities from setting up internet networks, including organizations that function like a utility. And those are 7 things that President Obama is going to touch on in his State of the Union speech tonight. And of course, there's going to be much more tonight on that State of the Union. So stay tuned to us here at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, as we bring you that speech live here on the SHR Media Networks. A Wisconsin Democrat and other lawmakers will hold up yellow pencils during the State of the Union tonight to honor the memory of those killed in the attack on the satirical French weekly Charlie Hebdo. Her office said, according to her spokesman, Eric Harris, told ABC and Yahoo News that the pencils won't be sharpened as a result of a conversation with the House Sergeant-at-Arms responsible for security at the high-profile event. They didn't specify stimulate not to sharpen them, but we are certainly aware of certain security concerns, Harris said by telephone. We'll be sure to keep it safe and secure environment for the president. In a written statement emailed to reporters, Harris said that Moore would raise her pencil during the applause break to honor those who lost their lives in the pursuit of open ideas and free expression. The Senate's top tax law writer accused President Obama today of undertaking class warfare with his plan to raise taxes on wealthier Americans to help the middle class. Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said proposals Obama is expected to set out at the State of the Union this evening would violate principles of simplicity and revenue neutrality that Hatch said are key to any real tax reform. He said, quote, "This plan that we'll hear about tonight appears to be more about redistribution, with adding complexity and class warfare directed at job-creating businesses than about tax reform," Hatch said in remarks prepared for delivery in a speech to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He said, "This was unfortunate because we're going to need real leadership from the White House, not just liberal talking points, if tax reform is going to be successful." And Republicans have chosen freshman Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa to deliver their rebuttal to President Obama's State of the Union address, but history shows the honor can be a double-edged sword for politicians looking to leap into the national spotlight. The Republican Party has announced Senator Ernst will deliver the conservative rebuttal speech to Obama's upcoming State of the Union at 9 Eastern after less than 1 month on the job. For Republican strategist Katie Packer Gage, the decision was far from unexpected, saying, quote, "She is an up-and-coming rising star with the party. I'm not at all surprised they would go with somebody that's kind of fresh-faced." Ernest burst into the scene during the 2014 midterm elections, gaining notoriety for a campaign ad in which she discussed castrating hogs on an Iowa farm, promising to cut pork in Washington if elected. She went on to become Iowa's first woman senator and first female combat veteran to serve in the nation's highest congressional chamber. For Laura Brown, a program director at George Washington University's Graduate School of Political Management, the decision to put Ernst front and center on Tuesday night is a wise one. She said, quote, "They want to put her forward as a woman from essentially the heartland, a state where the presidential race will essentially kick off. The selection of Ernest 44 is also just the thing Republicans need to fight long-held public perceptions of their party," she adds. "It's a smart move," Brown explains. "Republicans have been under assault lately for both the war on what they say are the war on women from liberals and for being seen only as the party of white men." And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be bringing you that, as I said, that full coverage starting at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, following the president's speech. Of course, we'll have a little analysis, followed by the Republican response. Then Orleen Kurla, SHR Global Affairs correspondent, will join us for the conservative response tonight in response to this speech. So stay tuned to SHR tonight for the latest on the State of the Union address tonight. All right, moving on, some other D.C. news that we're following today. The top Democrat on the U.S. Senate Banking Committee said on Tuesday he did not want to rush on a vote to legislation to impose more sanctions on Iran, speaking a day after the panel said it would delay hearings on the issue for 1 week. "There's not a rush on this. These negotiations are going forward. I don't want to disrupt the negotiations," said Senator Sherrod Brown, the ranking member of the Banking Committee, told reporters at the U.S. Capitol. The Banking Committee has been scheduled to hold public and classified hearings on Iran this week ahead of debate and a vote on Thursday on a bill sponsored by Republican Senator Mark Kirk and Democratic Robert Mendez to impose more sanctions if there is no nuclear agreement by the end of June. But the panel said on Monday it would wait until next week to hold the hearings. Brown referred questions about the reason for the delay to Senator Richard Shelby, the panel's chairman. Shelby's aides could not immediately be reached for comment. The Republican-controlled Senate also on Tuesday rejected Democrats' bids to ban exports from the Keystone XL oil pipeline and to require building the project with American-made steel. In largely party-line votes, the Senate sidetracked the first two additions to a bill seeking to approve construction of the 1,179,000 pipeline. Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts and Senator Al Franken of Minnesota argued that their additions would ensure the pipeline, which will carry an estimated 800,000 barrels of oil from the Canadian tar sands to the Gulf Coast refineries, and will benefit Americans with fuel and jobs. Proponents of the Keystone XL pipeline have made promises that would increase our energy security, but when they are given the chance to support keeping the oil in the United States, they actively oppose the amendment to do so, Markley said. But Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, said such restrictions on a privately funded energy project amounted to a slippery slope. The Senate overwhelmingly endorsed a bipartisan measure to boost energy efficiency. The Keystone XL oil pipeline is the top priority on the Republican agenda this Congress, and Democrats hope to use the legislation to score political points on key issues associated with the project, including its contribution to global warming. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island outlined Tuesday an 8-word measure that says climate change is real and not a hoax. And ladies and gentlemen, I think he's speaking BS, or as I would say, Corey, he's been drinking too much of the loony water.
Yes! Don't drink the Kool-Aid, ladies and gentlemen. You will regret it. Even in the next life.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, that's all on the D.C. news. Now, we'll send it over to Corey Evan, and he has more on the business news tonight. Corey, take it away.
Will do, Jake. The Dow picked up just a paltry 3 points at 17,515. The Nasdaq is up 20 points at 46.54, and the S&P 500 picked up 3 points at 20.22. So sort of a meh sort of Tuesday. I guess they're all out for tacos. But at any rate, oil dropped after Iraqi crude production, on the note of the Keystone Pipeline, surged to a record, and the International Monetary Fund cut its global growth outlook. Crude fell 4.7% in New York, according to Business Week, and 1.7% in London. Iraq is pumping 4 million barrels a day and will boost exports, Oil Minister Abdel Mahdi said at a news conference in Baghdad. The IMF made the steepest reduction to its global growth outlook since January 2012 in its quarterly global outlook issued yesterday. Projections for the euro area, Japan, China, and Latin America were trimmed. Oil has fallen by more than half since June as the U.S. pumped at the fastest pace in more than 3 decades, and OPEC resisted calls to reduce production. Goldman Sachs and Societe Generale were among banks to reduce their price forecast last week. OPEC has no immediate plan to cut its output target for crude, and Iran is strong enough to withstand a deeper slump in prices, even if the country must sell at $25 a barrel, Oil Minister Bajan Namdar Sangana said. OPEC maintained its output quota of 30 million barrels a day at a meeting on November 27th. The 12-member group pumped to 30.2 million a day in December, exceeding its target for a 7th straight month, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. OPEC is next scheduled to meet June 5th in Vienna. Tax season officially starts today, and for the first time ever, your tax return will include questions about your Obamacare coverage. This from WWMT out of Washington, D.C. The IRS says the vast majority of Americans will only need to check a box to verify they have coverage. The earlier that you file this year, the better, though. Experts say waiting to file could put you at greater risk for, get this, Jay, identity theft. Ooh.
Not good.
Not good at all. So the soonest your W-2s all come in, get over to H&R or Jackson Hewitt or your local tax guy, whoever you use, just get her done. And speaking of get her done, I'm not endorsing anyone, ladies and gentlemen, but I will note that Shake Shack in New York has proven that New Yorkers are willing to line up for its $5 burgers. Now the company is asking investors to pay as much as $16 a piece for its shares. Started a decade ago by New York restaurateur Danny Meyer, Shake Shack wants to raise as much as $80 million in an IPO, selling 5 million shares for $14 to $16 a piece. That indicates a market value of as much as $568 million based on 35.5 million shares outstanding, according to a filing today. That valuation is almost 7 times Shake Shack's sales of $82.5 million in 2013, the last full year for which it provides revenue figures. For the 39 weeks through September, it was on track to generate sales of about $112 million in 2014, the filing shows. Even using that higher figure, Shake Shack is valuing itself at 5 times sales, a premium to its peers. El Pollo Loco fetches around 2.5 times sales, Noodles & Company trades at 2 times, and Potbelly Corporation is around 1.2 times its annualized sales figures for this year, based on the first 3 quarters of the year. All 5 restaurants that went public last year have gained since their debuts. Dave & Buster's, the chain with games and food aimed at adults, has surged 82% since its October IPO, while Habit Restaurants, a burger and sandwich spot, has jumped 67% in the 2 months it's been public. Shake Shack is scheduled to price its IPO on January 29th, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. And you know what, Jay? Hearing those numbers, it's really tempting for me to go on now and get some stock from Shake Shack. Your thoughts? Just based on what you hear?
I'm not sure. It's a little early yet. I want to find a little bit more information about the company before I actually start buying.
Right. And on that note, you can go ahead and I'll send you this article and we'll post it up for all of you to check it out on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Really tantalizing offer, it seems.
It does indeed. All right, that's Corey Evan. He has the business news, and due to time constraints tonight, we're going to go ahead and get right into tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evan.
Thank you as always, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. Our first item on the docket comes to us not in the U.S., but out of France, believe it or not. This one comes to us from Fox News. The mayor of Paris says that she intends to sue Fox News over reports aired on the cable channel in the days following the Charlie Hebdo massacre, suggesting there are Muslim no-go zones in the French capital. Quote, the image of Paris has been prejudiced, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo told CNN's Christian Amanpour today, and the honor of Paris has been prejudiced, unquote. We empathize with the citizens of France as they go through a healing process and return to everyday life. Michael Clemente, executive VP of news at Fox News, responded in a statement to Politico. However, we find the mayor's comments regarding a lawsuit misplaced, unquote. On Saturday, Fox News' Janine Pirro apologized for the assertion made by Islamic terrorist expert, quote-unquote expert, Steve Emerson, claiming that there are no-go zones throughout Europe and specifically the city of Birmingham in the UK. Quote, the guest asserted that the city of Birmingham, England is totally Muslim and that it is a place where non-Muslims don't go, Pirro said Sunday. Both are incorrect. Over the course of this last week, we have made some regrettable errors on air regarding the Muslim population in Europe, particularly with regard to England and France. And to be clear, there is no formal designation of these zones in either country and no credible info to support the assertion that there are specific areas in these countries that exclude individuals based solely on their religion. The network's coverage was widely mocked on Twitter, where users invoked the hashtag Fox News Facts. Emerson himself later issued an apology on his website. Quote, I've clearly made a terrible error for which I am deeply sorry. My comments about Birmingham were totally an error, and I'm issuing this apology and correction for having made this comment about the beautiful city of Birmingham. I do not intend to justify or mitigate my mistake by stating that I had relied on other sources because I should have been much more careful. Apparently those apologies were not enough to stop Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, who waded into the controversy during a speech in London. In an address to the Henry Jackson Society, a British think tank, Jindal said immigrant Muslims are seeking to colonize Western countries because setting up your own enclave and demanding recognition of a no-go zone are exactly that, according to his prepared remarks. Later, Jindal doubled down on the no-go zone talk. I knew that by speaking the truth we were going to make people upset, Jindal told CNN after his speech. The big issue in non-assimilation is the fact that you have people that want to come to our country but not adopt our values, not adopt our language, and in some cases want to set apart their own enclaves and hold on to their own values. I think that's dangerous, unquote. Careful, Governor Jindal, you might upset the wrong people. I mean, of course, everything we say these days has the potential to offend someone, but still, step lively, ladies and gentlemen. Coming back to the U.S., a lawsuit filed by a former Culver City, California high school student claims she was raped by 3 of the school's football players on campus during school hours, and that one of the rapes was video recorded by her attackers and then distributed to other students, according to the LA Times. These incidents occurred in December 2013, according to the suit, which accuses the Culver City Unified School District of negligence, saying officials failed to supervise the victim and the alleged attackers. The suit was filed last Wednesday in Los Angeles Superior Court by the girl's mother on her behalf. In a statement today, Culver City School District Superintendent Dave LaRose said the district had cooperated with police and only recently learned of the girl's lawsuit. LaRose said the district had responded immediately and cooperatively to this incident with the Culver City PD. In addition to the district, the suit names then-student Jeremy Weaver and 2 unnamed students who were minors at the time as defendants. All 3 were starters on the school's varsity football team at the time, according to the lawsuit. The victim, identified as AS in court documents, was a 14-year-old freshman at Culver City High at the time, the lawsuit states. Over the course of nearly 3 weeks in December, the suit claims the 3 football players who were in peak physical condition, extremely strong and physically intimidating, allegedly repeatedly raped and sexually assaulted her on campus. One of the incidents, of course, was recorded, the suit claims, and the video was distributed to other students. The football players also allegedly spread malicious rumors regarding AS's sexual promiscuity, the lawsuit says. She allegedly endured relentless bullying, humiliation, and trauma as a result, and had to move to new schools. Twice. I believe that bit, ladies and gentlemen. A few weeks after the assaults, the girl came forward and confided in her mother, said Judith Yedidzian, an attorney representing her family. She and her mother reported the incident to police and to school officials last January, Yedidzian said. That's when the suit alleges Weaver and one of the other boys confronted the victim, pressuring her to recant her accusations, threatening her, and physically intimidating her. Miss A.S., I will not, I repeat, not condone you giving in to their threats. I must encourage you to stay strong, little lady. You deserve to. An attorney whose clients for an undisclosed settlement for a lot of money in a sexual assault scandal that made national headlines and defamed another scholastic football program a little more than a decade ago said he believes a possible $1.5 million lawsuit against Sayreville Public Schools will not go to court. Sayreville Public Schools, according to mycentraljersey.com, and the borough of Sayreville could be facing a $1.5 million negligence suit related to the hazing and sexual assaults that allegedly occurred last year inside the high school football team's locker room, according to a report. New Jersey Advance Media, which obtained a copy of the notice of intent letter, dated December 12th, reported that an alleged victim plans to sue the borough and the school district, charging that the 7 football players who perpetrated the alleged assaults against 4 teammates were not properly supervised. The alleged victim suffered bodily and severe emotional injuries, which may haunt the victim for the rest of his life, according to the notice. Personal injury attorney Randall Richards, a shareholder with Woodbridge-based Willent, Goldman, and Spitzer, who serves as chairman of the firm's personal injury team, is representing the alleged victim. And 2 former professional wrestlers accused the WWE of selling violence while ignoring concussions that they say left them with serious brain injury. The men, including one who performed under the name Skull Von Crush, have filed a potential class action lawsuit in federal court in Philadelphia that echoes thousands of suits pending against the NFL. The NFL litigation pending in the same courthouse could yield a $1 billion settlement if a judge approves the proposed deal. And on that bombshell, it's time to declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed. And I must note, in entertainment, I'm cutting it short today, but I do have one bit of entertainment news that you want to be aware of. Netflix has released a full list of movies and TV shows coming to the video streaming service, as well as the ones that are going away. One of the most highly anticipated shows this month is Season 3 of the Netflix original series House of Cards. Those episodes will be available for streaming on February 27th. Among those that are to be listed, Gucci the Director, Hot Pursuit, Spartacus the Complete Series, The Brothers Bloom, We're No Angels, The Little Rascal Save the Day, Ever After High. Ooh dear, Ever After High is going to be on there. There's a long list here. I can't get to every single one of them, ladies and gentlemen, so I will go ahead and post that up on the Facebook page for you, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report.
All right. Thank you very much, Corey. Corey, with the short entertainment news tonight. As Corey stated, due to time constraints tonight because of the State of the Union, we're going to go ahead and opt and take a short commercial break here at this point, so we make sure to get you on the coverage right on time tonight. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and take a commercial break, and we'll be back with our start of our State of the Union coverage after this short break here on the SHR Media Networks. You've been listening to the Evan Miller
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report. For more information about today's program, go to shrmedia.com or thepunditpress.com. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again next time.